In business today, three things to know. First, in the race for control of Congress, Republicans are nearing the finish line. We'll bring you the latest election news and what the GOP agenda may look like if they win. Then, grounded, America's privatization of space takes a hit as two high-profile failures and one death have many asking if space is the right final frontier for commercialization. And misfire, what's behind a sudden drop in gun sales for the nation's leading manufacturers? Arise Xchange starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Hope you all had a nice weekend. We know that Tuesday is Election Day, but that is all we know, with so many race toss-ups. At the moment, Republicans appear to be poised to take control of the U.S. Senate, while Democrats are holding their own in state races. James Blue, our Washington bureau chief, is at Baltimore's War Memorial Auditorium, where First Lady Michelle Obama is joining in a Get Out the Vote rally. James, good afternoon to you. Why is Michelle Obama in Maryland, which is solidly a blue state right now?
It's a solid blue state that may go Republican because the governor's race here is very, very close. It turns out I'm just at the rally. Mrs. Obama is just about to come out. And the Democrat, who is the current lieutenant governor, is running neck and neck with a Republican, and it could go the Republican way. And so the White House has Mrs. Obama here trying to shore up a race that should be something solidly in the Democrat column.
You know, it's very interesting because we were talking last week about how important the state races are, and there is a lot on the line in the states, maybe even more so than on the federal level.
There is, and you know, the real issue is that states are where the actual rubber meets the road. From abortion rights, from regulation, from taxes. It's really where, legislators can have an impact and governors can have an impact on business. So it is a very important thing who gets to run these state houses.
James, is anybody showing up to this election? However, we talk about it a lot, but recent polls show that Americans may have the lowest turnout for a midterm election in quite a few years.
I think there is likely to be a low turnout. That's why you have the First Lady here trying to get people to the polls. It's an issue related to sort of dissatisfaction with the direction of the country. There's no sort of big national race that's sort of taking people by storm, not the chance to elect a first black president, not the chance potentially in 2016 to elect a woman president. And so people are just sort of a bit disaffected. The message from the Democrats, those most in trouble, if you really want things to continue to improve, keep us in. And that's been the message today at a rally with about probably 3,000 people. But I got to tell you, it's pretty lackluster.
You know, it's interesting because you always follow the money in these elections. And right now, the way Wall Street bets is often the way they think the election is going to go because they're making donations based on who they think will win. And that's who they're trying to curry favor with. They are putting their money behind Republicans this year, aren't they?
They are, and basically that has a lot to do with all those bank settlements that Eric Holder was able to negotiate while at the Justice Department, and a real sense that the Democrats are the regulators and the Republicans are the ones who are going to help folks make money. However, it is a bit misleading. The number one candidate in terms of raking in dollars from Wall Street, Democratic Senator from New Jersey, Cory Booker. He's a big, good friend to the financial institution.
Yeah, he has shown that time and time again. Finally, what are some of the close races we should be watching here that could go one way or the other, and we might be up late tomorrow night until we have decisions?
Yeah, I think we're going to be up late and tomorrow night and into the next few weeks. Louisiana and Georgia, the two Senate races there, are neck and neck and will likely go into a runoff. There's an election for Senate out in Alaska. We're not going to get those results till much later. And then, you know, Iowa is wide open. North Carolina is in a dead heat. It is going to be a big night. And unfortunately, with low turnout, that could mean a good thing for whichever team has gotten most voters to the polls in the early voting.
And let's remember that the Democrats have said time and time again, and they proved it certainly in the last presidential election, that their ground game is better. So the Republicans up against that. James Blue, thank you so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow, of course.
Speak to you tomorrow. Bye.
The markets pulled back from record highs on Monday, and oil closes below $80 a barrel. Let's take a look at the final numbers. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down about 24.34 to 17,366. The S&P 500 down a quarter. And the NASDAQ did finish the day up in the green by just $8.16. Some of the earnings news that we're watching today, the big story is Herbalife. Third quarter earnings disappointing. The EPS of $1.45 did miss analyst expectations. Meantime, Herbalife is also paying a distributor $15 million to settle accusations that it is a pyramid scheme. However, Herbalife is not admitting any wrongdoing. AIG reporting EPS of $1.21, which handily beat estimates. AIG third quarter revenue of $2.2 billion also beat expectations. By the way, AIG could be on the hook for about $40 million because of the crash of the Virgin Galactic spaceship. It is the insurance company behind it. Sprint reporting a big loss this quarter. Per share losses of 19 cents, quadruple the losses that calculated. Sprint's third quarter revenue came in also in at $200 million below estimates, and the company says it plans to shed some 2,000 employees. And food maker Cisco reporting an EPS of 52 cents that beat estimates by 4%. The global food maker and distributor said strong acquisitions boosted revenue this quarter. And looking at commodities, gold closing down 570, and oil, there you go, $78.36 a barrel. Oil continues its slide. On the economic front, conflicting numbers relating to manufacturing. The index from the Institute of Supply Management had a surprise expansion in October. The index rose to its highest level since August. But then we look at the purchasing manufacturing index from Market, which showed a drop in October. So choose the one you like better. And construction spending in the U.S. slipped for the second month. Spending dropped 0.4% in September. A mixed report from Detroit on U.S. auto sales and a lot of other economic data to sort through. We're joined by Chris Lowe. He is chief economist with FTN Financial. Chris, as always, welcome back to Arise Exchange.
Thank you, Andrew. Good to be here.
Let's start with these auto sales. Ford did poorly, while GM and Chrysler did pretty well. What's going on with the auto sales?
Well, it was all about trucks this month.
And that's because of lower fuel prices, right?
Lower fuel prices, trucks and SUVs selling well. Seeing oil falling below 80 a barrel, getting the word from OPEC last week that they're not interested in trying to cut production to boost prices because they're afraid U.S. producers are just going to step in and fill that gap.
Yeah, I think we have a graphic, by the way, of how the sales did for the auto industry. I have always found this very interesting that when the price of gasoline goes down, trucks and SUV sales go up, even though you hold on to these vehicles for 3 to 5 years, and the price of oil just goes all over the place. It's really a psychological issue.
Well, it is. You see oil prices go up for 3 months, and people start thinking they're going up forever. Mm-hmm. And the same happens when prices come down. Nationally, we're under $3 a gallon at most gas pumps across the U.S. right now, and that seems to be the magic number.
Anything in these auto sale numbers that are concerning right now?
Well, the big thing is that sales dropped by about 1 million units at an annual rate last month, and they just stayed steady this month compared to last month. So we're starting to see some really high inventory levels. Either the automakers are going to have to start putting the big discounts on again, or they're going to have to cut production.
And we often see that towards the end of the year, that if you want to buy a car, the end of the year is often the right time, correct?
That's absolutely right. But, this could also be what explains the anomaly between those two manufacturing indices.
I was going to ask you about that. What do we read into that? And monthly numbers are always very suspect to begin with.
Right. And we don't know for sure, but it very well could be a calendar quirk that the surveys are done at different times. The automakers have a really big manufacturing footprint. So if they picked up strength at the beginning of the month that's starting to peter out at the end, this is exactly the kind of thing you might see where the two indices diverge.
And Boeing as well has a very big footprint in this, doesn't it?
Boeing absolutely is huge. Their sales have been terrific this year, but really bumpy.
Yeah, indeed. All right, so let's ask you about what happens now with the election and what to expect, because this is really a crapshoot right now. And what happens, what does Wall Street want to see? Does it want to see deadlock? Does it want to see some action? What do you think the markets really want to see?
Well, let's start with what Congress has done this year, which is pretty much nothing.
Yeah, and we've had record highs on Wall Street.
Oh, yeah. No, we were supposed to see reform of the GSEs, that's Fannie and Freddie.
Didn't happen.
Died in the Senate. We were supposed to see tax reform. Died between the two houses on that one. So I think what Wall Street would like to see is a Republican win. However, that comes with caveats, right? Because you still need 60 votes to get anything through. It's got to be Republicans who are willing to work with Democrats. And of course,
and
the president still has the veto pen.
That's right.
Sure.
That's
yeah.
right.
But that is, at least it was a month ago, what Republicans were talking about. What we're hearing this week is they're feeling their oats and they're going to send some stuff to the White House the president might not be willing to sign.
Finally, your outlook on the fourth quarter?
Well, it looks like it's shaping up at about 2.5%. I tell you, one of the biggest...
A little bit lower than what we've had so far.
A little bit lower, but it's not bad. That still gives you growth for the year over 2. You know, after that huge drop in the first quarter, we weren't sure we were going to get there. 2.5%. The dollar is perhaps the biggest wild card. Huge increase in the third quarter. We should see the trade deficit widen. If it doesn't, then we could easily see 3% growth.
Okay. Chris Lowe, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Coming up, can Virgin Galactic recover after last week's deadly crash? You're watching Arise Exchange.
There is a reason Africa is called the new frontier. What was once potential is now an opportunity ready to be seized. Once revered for our resources, today's wealth lies in our people. People who build the cities that shape the future. People who know an idea in one place means business in another. A generation for whom technology means there are no borders, no boundaries. We are the new lions in a brave new world, kings of the urban jungle. And there's a bank that puts the world in our pocket and the future in our hands. UBA, Africa's global bank.
Apple unveiled new products today. Did it meet expectations?
Apple stock is up 20%.
The White House says it has proper measures to contain the spread of Ebola.
This seems to be, in some ways, exploding. What are officials saying?
We remain focused on working with our partners on the ground to stop the epidemic.
Enhanced measures have been put in place in Africa and the United States.
This is hitting home in a very real way, and I think, we need to be concerned.
Hello and welcome to Arise America. I'm Debbie Turner-Bell.
Welcome back to Arise Exchange. The growing field of commercial spaceflight suffered 2 serious blows in the past week. First, Orbital Science's rocket exploded just seconds after blasting off on a cargo mission to the International Space Station for NASA. Then, Virgin Galactic Spaceship Two crashed during a test flight, killing 1 pilot and seriously injuring another. In the case of Virgin Galactic, Richard Branson's company had hoped to take its first passengers to space early next year. The causes of both accidents are still unclear, but the fallout could be huge for the entire industry. Joining us now is Ross Amer, CEO of Aero Consulting Experts. Ross, welcome back to Arise Exchange. A very difficult week for everyone in the aviation industry, and certainly for pilots. In the Virgin Galactic case, these were test pilots, and danger, of course, comes with the territory. But how much of a setback, time-wise, do you think this could be to the company that's hoping to take paying passengers to space?
Hi, Andrew. It's always, aviation has always faced setbacks like this from the inception. This is a major setback, obviously. It will set the clock back a while, but let's not forget, there are real aviation romantics. You mentioned test pilots, engineers, entrepreneurs that are committed to this project. I don't think they're going to be dissuaded, and they'll keep going. But definitely, unfortunately, by the way, these 2 accidents had nothing to do with each other.
That's a very good point. They're completely separate. That's right.
Yeah, completely separate. It just happened to happen in a bad time, so close to each other. So I'm afraid there is a definite setback, but don't count the commercial space completely out.
Yeah, and Richard Branson was asked today if it's worth the risk to keep going. He said it's, of course, worth the risk. because that's the only way we advance. And, we do learn a lot from accidents, don't we? It actually makes everything safer, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Everything we know in aviation, in space, we've learned from accidents and our mistakes. That's the nature of the game. It happened from the day one with the Wright brothers took in the air. So we will learn from this, certainly. On the other hand, the private industry, space industry, cannot compete with NASA and JPL with the unlimited access to science and technology and perhaps equal amount of money.
I want to ask you about that, Ross, because there's been talk for some time that it is going to be private aviation in the U.S. that's sort of going to replace NASA because there's a profit motive and because NASA has really, in the minds of many, sort of not really advancing much. We're not going to Mars, where they're not doing a whole lot right now.
That's true. But again, you can't just throw away years and years of NASA and their counterpart JPL, what they've done in aerospace away. It's impossible. You cannot replace them. Yes, they are not doing much right now, but the world and technology cannot be stopped. I'm sure they'll come up with something, and perhaps this setback in the private sector may boost their position.
The Americans are sort of adventurous types, and I don't exactly hear clamoring from people to stop the whole project. And those who have signed up say they will still hop on board Virgin Galactic, including Sir Richard Branson. Does that surprise you?
No, it does not. And it goes back to what I was talking about, the real aviation romantics. I bet you that pilot, that test pilot who is now fortunately alive, if you told him tomorrow there's a test flight coming up, he will be the first one to jump in that spaceship. That's the nature of aviation. The people that love it, they'll do anything, and that's what has propelled aviation among the rest of the science way ahead of everything else.
Do you think right now the regulations are keeping up? The FAA is the regulatory agency over Virgin Galactic. They're on the scene. The NTSB, of course, is on the scene. And these are aviation enthusiasts, the people who make up those agencies.
Definitely. Although, let's not forget, right now, if FAA was to really police or oversee Virgin Galactic, I don't think they have any scientist that knows anything about it. So they have to kind of rely on all the information from them, or perhaps go to NASA. But on the other hand, when you have an industry that is for profit, let's not forget, commercial aerospace was created for profit. They cannot police themselves completely. So you do need somebody else to look from the outside and kind of watch them and make sure everything is...
But you could also argue the only way we're going to advance at this point is to have some profit in there. Ross, thank you so much as always.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Okay, appreciate it. Time now for our business ticker stories making headlines across the nation and the world. Tough talk from the German Chancellor. Angela Merkel has said she would rather see the UK pack up and leave the European Union than compromise free movement within EU nations. The Chancellor says proposed caps or quotas on the number of migrants arriving in the UK are a threat to a core EU principle of freedom of movement. Saudi Arabia's largest bank is poised to break the Middle East record for an IPO. Not even a fatwa against the National Commercial Bank could stop it from attracting about $58 billion in investor bids. The shares are oversubscribed by 23 times. The bank has pledged to divest $38 billion in assets to become fully Sharia compliant. The United Nations is sounding the alarm on climate change. A new report from the UN panel on climate science warns that if greenhouse emissions are not reduced, it could lead to irreversible damage to the environment. The report says that we need to cut man-made greenhouse emissions by 70% by 2050 and completely by 2100. The resurrected World Trade Center is open for business. 13 years after the Twin Towers were destroyed by terrorists, the first tenants are moving in. Publishing giant Condé Nast will move its employees into One World Trade Center, formerly known as the Freedom Tower, located on the original site of the attacks. The new tallest building in the Western Hemisphere is 60% leased already. And looking to start a company? Head to Singapore. That's according to the World Bank's latest ranking of the best countries for business. The study praises Singapore's easy access to business permits and the little time required to resolve tax issues. The United States, by the way, ranked 7th, down from 2nd place last year. Coming up, why our favorite person of the day learned that gunpoint robbery is not a weight loss plan. You're watching Arise Exchange.
The search continues for the more than 200 abducted schoolgirls.
Unquestionably, this is a Nigerian problem.
President Barack Obama stopped short of visiting the border. Why can't Washington get anything done when it comes to immigration reform?
But you got to come up with a solution to it, and no one has a real solution.
Does this further terrorize people, make them more afraid, or is this making people angry? Hello and welcome to Arise America. I'm Debbie Turner Bell.
Last week on Arise Exchange, the nauseating numbers from two iconic brands and whether they have a plan to turn around their businesses. Existing home sales surged to their best numbers. Can the broader markets support that in the real estate business?
When long-term interest rates are low, it's usually a bad sign for the macro economy.
Toys R Us is defending its decision to sell Breaking Bad action figures. The toys come with a detachable sack of cash and a bag of meth. Not real meth, fake meth. Watch this week for more Arise Exchange. Time now for our favorite person of the day, when we pick one person who grabbed our attention, and not for the right reasons. You remember the Subway sandwich diet that Jared used to promote? Eat Subway, lose weight? Well, not all diets work for everyone, as we know. Most of us just move on and try something else. That was not the approach for one Alabama man. Zachary Torrance says he tried the Subway diet, and when it failed, he decided that he would rob 4 Subway sandwich shops in 4 days as revenge for his inability to lose weight. Police say Torrance held up the fast food joints at gunpoint. That's a weight loss plan in itself. It burns calories, claiming that he was only trying to get his money back because the so-called Subway diet did not work for him. Well, now he will be on a prison diet since he has pleaded guilty to the robberies. And so Zachary Torrance is our favorite person of the day. Coming up, gun sales are off target. Why? You're watching Arise Exchange.
News can definitely be improved when reflecting diversity.
A lot of mainstream news, they don't dive into it.
Who wants to hear about negativity all the time?
They only show what they think people want to know and not what people really should know.
World-based stories, that's what I enjoy the most.
I think diversity of news is important to the world so that everybody will be aware of their surroundings and what is happening today.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Last week on Arise Exchange, the nauseating numbers from two iconic brands and whether they have a plan to turn around their businesses. Existing home sales surged to their best numbers. Can the broader markets support that in the real estate business?
When long-term interest rates are low, it's usually a bad sign for the macro economy.
Toys R Us is defending its decision to sell Breaking Bad action figures. The toys come with a detachable sack of cash and a bag of meth. Not real meth, fake meth. Watch this week for more Arise Exchange.
The search continues for the more than 200 abducted schoolgirls.
Unquestionably, this is a Nigerian problem.
President Barack Obama stopped short of visiting the border. Why can't Washington get anything done when it comes to immigration reform?
But you got to come up with a solution to it, and no one has a real solution.
Does this further terrorize people, make them more afraid, or is this making people angry? Hello and welcome to Arise America. I'm Debbie Turner Bell.
And welcome back to Rise Exchange. After years of spiking sales, gun sales are slowing dramatically. Sturm Ruger, the largest gun maker by market cap, missed big time on earnings last week. Its share is down 4% today and have fallen a whopping 41% this year. So are weak sales a blip on the radar, or this is the new normal for the industry? Brian Ruttenbur is equity research analyst at CRT Capital Group, and he joins us by phone. Brian, welcome to Rise Exchange.
Well, thank you very much.
I thought everybody was out there buying guns. What happened?
Everybody is out there buying handguns, but not military-style rifles or black rifles.
Okay, so that's basically the difference here as far as Ruger goes?
Absolutely. The whole industry had a balloon effect from the legislation that was proposed, a year or so ago, and went away to restrict and ban certain types of firearms, primarily black rifles, as it's broadly called in the industry, or military-style rifles.
And how big of a, for those not familiar with the gun industry, how big of a market is the military rifles versus the handgun rifles and importance to their bottom line?
Well, during the boom time, military-style rifles became bigger than handguns. During non-boom times, handguns are bigger in terms of units shipped per year.
Historically, what do we see drive, gun sales in this country? Is it the media? Is it when shootings take place? What is sort of driving the numbers?
Okay, so over the last 30 years, we've seen compounded annual growth in gun sales of about 8%. And you've had big blips either way, spikes in valleys, if you will. And the spikes are caused by fear. Fear of legislation is the biggest driver, and that's legislation to ban certain types of firearms. So, for example, if they were going to go out and ban TVs, everybody would go out and buy as many TVs as possible. So that's what's driving this.
For the industry as a whole, when these happen, do they see new people come into the marketplace, or is it current gun owners who are simply stocking up on more firearms?
With the ban fears, we saw a whole lot of what we heard, at least, is that it's existing gun owners going out and buying what could be potentially banned. On what is really growing in the industry right now, we just had NICS data, which is a forward indicator of gun sales that just came out today. What we have found from that is that's primarily handgun driven, and those are concealed carry guns that are the hot things. And it's women getting into this market. It used to be a white man sport. Now it's become an every person sport, and you've got a lot more women into the shooting sports and especially into the concealed carry. So the hot area is concealed carry guns.
And so did the gun manufacturers sort of miss this? Because the inventory, I understand, on the military-style weapons sort of grew, and I'm wondering if they simply, missed the efforts of where they should have put their manufacturing into.
Right. So there's hundreds of gun manufacturers. So while we're pointing fingers at the two publicly traded gun companies, there are literally 100-plus gun manufacturers out there that probably missed it. I think the public companies have done a little bit better job than the private companies, and I think that the private companies have continued to produce at peak levels even though demand has waned, especially in the MSRs and certain other parts of the market.
Let me ask you about the private companies. They're held in some cases by private equity firms, and after the Sandy Hook shootings in Connecticut, some of them said they were going to get out of the industry. Has that happened?
For example, Freedom Group, the largest gun manufacturer in the United States that owns Remington and a variety of other brands, they divested of certain investors that wanted out. So a lot of the core people that were in the investment of Freedom Group are still in there, but certain investors wanted out after Sandy Hook.
Okay, Brian Ruttenbur, equity research analyst at CRT Capital Group. Thank you so much for your input today. It's an interesting story. Thanks. Tomorrow on Rise Exchange, all eyes on the first earnings report out for Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba, coming off its record-breaking $25 billion IPO. Let's take a look at the numbers once again. The Dow pulling back after a series of record days last week, down about 26 points. The S&P 500 also in the red, though we saw some green arrows from the NASDAQ, up $8.16. Interesting enough, the big story today regarding oil, down below $80 a barrel to $78. How low can oil go? I'm Andrew Schmertz. Thanks for watching Arise Exchange. See you tomorrow.